Thank you very much, Chairman Guthrie and Ranking Member Davis, for holding this hearing and for allowing me to join your subcommittee today. This is an issue my constituents in Oregon care about a lot. I'm someone who worked my way through. I started at community college 2 years, and 2 years at University of Oregon, and then 3 years in law school. That makes me a double duck. And I did that all with a combination of loans, grants, and work study. And when I graduated, I went into public service, not to a private firm, but I still had little difficulty repaying my student debt. And that experience is less common today. As we know, more students are borrowing, they're borrowing larger amounts, and at the same time, there are millions of students who, many of whom were for some reason or another unable to complete their programs, and they're behind on their payments, or they're in default, which is causing an enormous drag on our economy. So we face a lot of challenges, and I hope that this committee will take a comprehensive approach to making higher education accessible and affordable. And I wanted to follow up on the comment that was made about better, more frequent information from our panelists. I'm pleased to partner with Chairman Guthrie on the Empowering Students Through Enhanced Financial Counseling Act, long title but important piece of legislation that will help students with more better information, more frequent information, and help them limit borrowing and plan ahead for repayment. So we have a pretty long list: strengthening Pell Grants, simplifying loan repayment and access, providing evidence-based supportive students to help with completion rates, especially for those first-generation students. We have some great model programs out in Oregon in that regard. Students who are parents, students with disabilities, students returning from the workforce, veteran students. So there's a long list. And I just want to also make a comment about the income-driven repayment discussion that I've heard here today. There are bipartisan efforts. I have the SIMPLE Act, that is a bipartisan piece of legislation to get more people into income-driven repayment and to keep them there. It's the annual recertification that can sometimes get people out. So we're working on that again in a bipartisan way, and that's an important piece as well. But I really wanted to talk about the federal work-study program today. As someone who greatly benefited from it myself, I know that work-study can give students valuable real-world experiences, reinforce what they're learning in the classroom, and the program requires a match from employers, so we see federal funding go further. So I was, needless to say, disappointed to see the president propose a budget that would significantly reduce federal work-study investment. So, Mrs. Copeland-Morgan, how can the federal government maintain flexibility in the work-study program while also helping institutions connect more students with work-based learning opportunities that align with their interests and career goals? And I want to ask another question, too. Go ahead.
Certainly, thank you for the question, and let me just state for the record that I got into education being a federal work-study student working in financial aid for 4 years as a student. The federal work-study program is one way of bringing parity for internships, work experience, and other things. And it reduces the cost of students working. It retains them on campus because they're in generally the academic environment. Certainly more funding in work study, we'd love to see that. I think this is a bipartisan issue. We've seen that work study aids in retention. Certainly our community partners, which the federal work study program allows us to partner with community-based organizations to employ students to help do some of the work that you're talking about here today, outreach work, getting the word out about financial aid, job location development program helps. And I think the real issue is that we've got to make a greater investment in these programs that work, and federal work study is arguably one of the best, along with the Pell.
Thank you, and I'm glad you mentioned internships because we see that it's a real equity issue. Some of the affluent students can do a prestigious internship, but students of more modest means cannot, and that's a place where work study can help. Now, I know Representative Allen earlier asked a question about the formulas for allocating campus-based aid to institutions, and those formulas have changed very little since the 1970s, and that was a long time ago. Some of my colleagues probably weren't born back then. For the work study program, the majority of the funding is distributed to institutions based on how much they received decades ago. And I know Ms. Conklin explained our neediest students are often left out by this formula. So Mrs. Copeland-Morgan, how can work study funding be allocated more equitably?
Let's get rid of the base guarantee in the campus-based program. We've been talking about this since I've been in the profession, to make it more modern and reflect, distribute those dollars where those students are, where the lowest and neediest students, lowest income and neediest students are. But we can't do that without making a greater investment in the program.
Thank you very much. My time has expired. And again, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for allowing me to join you today.
Thank you for being here today. The gentlelady yields back. And